What is going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports, and the timing for the playoffs was perfect. We are putting this episode out as Game One of the finals is happening, so we're excited to do that. We're going to be talking about all about the NBA Finals and this matchup between the Bucks and Suns, as well as talk about the teams that just recently got eliminated in the playoffs, that being the Hawks and Clippers. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and let me introduce you now to the rest of the crew.
What is going on, guys? Eric, your ranting co host here. Glad to be back for another episode. And the Clippers may have lost, but they did at least manage to avoid the rant from me because they made it to the Western Conference Finals. And after already having to rant on LeBron and Ben Simmons, I'm a little ranted out right now. So glad I didn't have to do that. But definitely excited to bring you this finals matchup, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
What is going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and I'm excited that the Clippers are out just because now, no matter who ends up winning the finals, I'm not gonna, be one of those fans who's mad at the end of the finals, like, "Oh God, this team won." So thankfully got them out of the
Yeah.
way. I can be okay with whoever ends up winning the finals, and it's gonna be a good series, but hopefully ends up being a little bit more competitive than I think it's gonna be.
All right, yeah, that's gonna be a prelude to what Connor is gonna say later in the show, I'm guessing, for how many games it will take to get a champion. But we'll go around the hoop, and like I said, we've been kind of doing this all playoffs where we talk about each of the teams that loses in the playoffs after they lose. 16 teams started this playoffs. Now we're down to two, and the two most recent teams to get eliminated were the Clippers and Hawks. So two different teams as far as expectations go. The Clippers, especially at the start of the season, were championship or bust type of mode. Then when they had the Kawhi injury, obviously there was less expectations on them to win, but still they started out the season with that championship expectations. And then the Hawks, on the other hand, we were just thinking, okay, their expectation just make the playoffs. Like that was the thing for the Hawks. It was like, okay, they missed the bubble last year, so they weren't even in the bubble. But they have a good young team. We were thinking, okay, maybe they'll fight for a playoff spot, and then they ended up overachieving, in my opinion, in getting to this point. And the Clippers, to some, maybe underachieved. Others might have overachieved or gotten to where people thought they would, like Eric had them predicting them losing in this round. So I guess we'll talk about the Clippers first, guys. So I just kind of want to get some opinions on what you guys think the Clippers should do in the offseason, like any specific moves that they should make, players that they need to bring back, players that they need to go after, or something like that. What kind of changes should the Clippers do? I'll start with Eric. How do they make Kawhi happy and get him to resign?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was
Yeah.
going to say. That's the number one priority
Okay.
for them is they have to get Kawhi Leonard to stay. As we all know, and we talked about it in the last episode. I mean, he is a weird guy, and he is an unpredictable guy, and you have no idea what he's thinking. So I can't necessarily predict like what they would need to do to get him to stick around, but they need to be in contact with him or with Uncle Dennis or whoever they need to talk to, and they need to keep him around. I know some people might say, "Oh, well, look how good they did without him. They came back and beat the Jazz, and then they, you know, hung in there and almost stole some games from the Suns and had a chance to win that series. Like, look how, and they did all that without Kawhi, but." Think of how good that they probably would have done if they had Kawhi. You know what I mean? I mean, they could have probably won that series against the Suns if they'd had him. So, and we wouldn't even be talking about him right now. So that's priority number one. And I haven't looked at the contracts and everything. I don't know exactly who's on expiring deals or anything like that. But I have to say Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris played pretty well for them during this playoffs, so I would make sure to keep them, because I know some people are probably going to think the Clippers need to make a bunch of trades or do something like that, but I don't think there's too much they need to do. I mean, they've got a pretty good core group of players right now. They should be getting Serge Ibaka back next year. Terrence Mann had some big games, and especially that one against the Jazz that was huge for them. So they've got. I would probably try get rid of Patrick Beverly though. Like I don't know, man. He's like, we think Kawhi's a weird guy. This guy seems even weirder to me. I don't know. Like, he's very hostile during the games, and
Yeah.
he lets people get into his head. Like, he had that play where he shoved Chris Paul like during the timeout and got ejected and all that. Like, he's too much of a hothead. I mean, so I would probably get rid of him. And other than occasionally being good on defense, it's not like he does much for them anyway. And I know Luke Kennard has a bad contract. Like, he had some okay games in the playoffs, but his contract is really bad. Probably get rid of him too. But getting Kawhi, that's the first priority for sure. Like, that number one.
Yeah. Okay, Connor. I'll ask you this question because Eric, you're talking about more just like the basics. Like, they have to get Kawhi back, but in your opinion, do you think that they should try and trade Paul George for another sort of superstar somewhere, like to have a major shift in the roster with a big trade, or more keep Paul George? Let's see if they're healthy again next year and try that, and maybe just make some small minor adjustments on the team.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to them trying to trade Paul George. I mean, it just depends on what they can get for him.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm of the opinion, I think that if they can't get Kawhi to come back, then I think, honestly, they should try and trade Paul George and just blow it up. Like, okay, we couldn't bring Kawhi back. Paul George isn't our future. We're starting over. Like, I mean, because they have some nice young pieces there with, Reggie Jackson and Terrence Mann and all these people that they can sort of try and build a team around in the future. But as of if Kawhi stays, I don't know. Like I said, I wouldn't be opposed to trading him, but I don't know if, doing that would really, turn Kawhi off from the Clippers at that point, because obviously they are very good friends. Because I'm sure they could get a lot for him. I don't know if they could necessarily get another superstar for him, just because I think, at least not someone that's on his level. Just because it's kind of hard to trade superstar for superstar. Like, it's more so, if you're going to trade a superstar, you're going to get like a first round pick, maybe two, and then like, a couple other role players. You're not really going to get another superstar at that point. So if Kawhi leaves, yes. If Kawhi doesn't leave, I'm still up in the air. I mean, I can go off of like what Eric was talking about, like off-season moves for them. Like, I know one thing that they probably do need to do, in addition to maybe getting rid of some of these bad contracts, this is going to be the first you're ever going to hear from me. But honestly, I think they should look to. I don't know if he was on a 1-year deal or not. I have to look at this really quick. But
wait,
I know
are you about
he's
to
a
say
free
what
agent.
I think you're going to say?
Yeah, you might.
I'll say something after.
Yeah, no, because I was saying that honestly, the way he fit into the team, I think they need to try and see if they can re-sign Nicholas Bum.
Oh my God.
Because, I mean, well, and the other thing with him is that they know they can get him back on a cheap deal. Like, this isn't, a situation like he was in with the Hornets where he was making, $25 million and basically riding the bench. He's been able to do a lot more, I think, probably just because he's got two superstars around him. When he was in Charlotte, he did okay when Kemba was there, but once Kemba left and it was just like, Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham and all these other kind of average guys, like, then he just fell off the map, because it's like, okay, we don't have to worry about Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James or anyone on this team, or even Kemba Walker. Like, our biggest threat is Terry Rozier, of all people. So that's definitely, I think he's been in a good environment. If they can bring back him, maybe on another 1-year deal, that'd be great. They definitely do need to get more depth at center. Because like Eric said, Ibaka should be coming back. They still have Zubac, but they're really lacking in size outside of those two. I mean, because Marcus Morris obviously is a bit undersized at power forward. they really need another big man to go along with them. And I mean, I actually have been seeing some interesting things that people want the Clippers to try and pursue Terry Rozier. I don't know if the Charlotte Hornets would be okay with that, since Rozier was, one of our biggest bright spots this year. But always, if they're going to get rid of Patrick Beverley, then definitely trading for another point guard. I don't know where that would come from, but maybe they can use Paul George like that if they want, and maybe try and build a team around Kawhi. Because I mean, Kawhi's obviously, Paul George is not the kind of player you can build a team around. Kawhi Leonard is the kind of player you can build a team around. I mean, we saw it with the Raptors in 2019, the way he carried that team, basically. I mean, Pascal Siakam has obviously gotten better since then, but at the time, like, it was really just Kawhi Leonard and a bunch of, kind of average, like, borderline superstars, like maybe getting there, maybe young, I don't know. But he carried that team, and he could carry this team and also getting rid of Paul George would open up a huge amount of cap space for them. I mean, he's set to make like $40 million next year. So, yeah, there's a lot of circumstance that would go into trading Paul George or not, but there's other moves I think they could make instead that would help them a little bit more than that.
Okay.
I guess for me to answer that question, if Kawhi Leonard wants Paul George gone to stay, then I'm absolutely trading him.
Well, yeah.
and I agree with Connor too that if Kawhi leaves, I would trade him too. But I definitely agree with that. But if Kawhi says keep him, then I'll stay. Then I'm keeping him. So it's all about what Kawhi wants.
Yeah, he definitely has a strangle on the management there. It's, he has that kind of power where he can basically, be like, okay, I want my family on the flights, I want courtside seats for my wife and kids. He's got all sorts of privileges like that. Anything you can think of, he's getting that treatment. So I've got two kind of major and really big proposals for the Clippers, and I'm curious to see what your guys' reactions are going to be to these. So first one is like a basketball decision, and it's a Paul George mock trade. I would trade like Paul George, and probably you'd have to throw in some other pieces to try and get Bradley Beal from the Washington Wizards. I think that's a realistic sort of move that they could get to do like a superstar for superstar swap. And then I think Bradley Beal's a lot better than Paul George is, and then give him a chance to shine in the playoffs with Kawhi, be that number 2 option for the Clippers. And then that makes for an interesting reunion with Paul George and Russ in Washington.
Oh my God!
I know.
OKC Thunder.
That's just how it happened. That's just how it happened and turned out. But you hear all the time with Bradley Beal being frustrated with his situation in Washington. They've always had a bad team around him there. So I think he's a guy that's wanting to pair up with another superstar. And
I mean, technically he already is, but
I wouldn't call Russ a superstar. Right?
That's why I said technically.
Yeah, he
was
a superstar, but
it depends on who you ask.
Yeah. So how do you guys feel about that? I'll start with Eric. If you think that's a good trade for them.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. And I think that actually would be a good trade for the Wizards too, if they were to get something else besides Paul George. Like, obviously, if I'm the Wizards, I wouldn't want to just do a Paul George for Bradley Beal swap. Like, you'd have to give me something else. But I know for the Wizards, it's harder for them to get, talent with the market that they're in. And, a lot of big names like don't want to go there. So if I can get Paul George and something else, and then, I was going to say a draft pick, but I know the Thunder have most of the Clippers eligible draft picks, but
Terrence Mann
yeah. Well, actually, I think a lot of the ones the Thunder got from the Clippers were ones that the Heat had given them. So I think the Clippers do have some draft picks, but yeah, maybe a wild card, like how when the Thunder traded Paul George away and they got Shea, somebody like a Terrence Mann or I would say Reggie Jackson, but they have Russ, or somebody like that.
Zubac maybe, or
probably not.
Zubac, I know he doesn't have much value anymore.
No.
Nick Batum.
Yeah, Nick Bum. So I think that would be a good, especially if Bradley Beal really does one out. Because I know when the Wizards got eliminated, we talked about what did they need to do, and making Bradley Beal happy was like the number one thing. But if there's nothing that they can do to make him happy, and they have to trade him, I think that would be a pretty good avenue for them.
I mean,
what do you think?
I will say, just, because you kind of hit on everything there, but I mean, it obviously would be a good trade, I think, for both sides, but that would definitely be a situation where Clippers are getting definitely hella ranted on if they don't even make the finals when they have that team. Like, I think Paul, that would definitely be even more championship or bust than this year had been with Paul George and Kawhi. Like, if they get Kawhi and Bradley Beal, like, they better be making the finals or at least trying to make a run.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like my basketball solution for the Clippers, but then also, I've kind of thrown this around to you guys before, but I've never heard your
I know where you're
opinion on
going
it.
with this.
Okay. Connor knows where I'm going, but
Hey,
I think this isn't gonna be like a next year thing. It's gonna take a little bit of time, obviously, but I think what they need to do, they have one of the richest person in the world owning their team, Steve Ballmer. They need to build their own arena somewhere. It can either be somewhere else in LA. That LA is a huge city, so there's plenty of places in LA for them to put this
Well,
arena.
not much space is left in LA.
Yeah, but I mean they'll make some space for it. He can buy whatever he wants, dude. You know how much money he has? Like
That's true. He can, those buildings don't mean anything.
the guy literally prints money. But all right. Here's what they need. They need to build their own arena, establish their own independence as a team, because I feel like playing in Staples Center, it's always a Lakers. It feels like they're playing in the Lakers. They share the stadium, the Staples Center, but they need to be like an independent team, have their own facility. I mean, I guess they already have their own facility, but their own true, be their own team, or they could even take it a step further and go down to like San Diego or something. But I think they need to establish their fan base a little bit more and recreate something new and just get out of the shadow of the Lakers. I think that's seriously a problem, is being in like a shadow of the Lakers. All the things in the Staples Center are all Lakers stuff, all the jerseys and championship banners and everything. It's all Lakers and everything. So I think that's like an underrated thing that they need to do is become their own team. It's like they're a minor league team. They're like the second team, branch out a little bit, do something new. I don't know. Do you guys think that means anything, or is that just a nice little, facility upgrade or whatever? Like, what do you think? What do you guys think about that?
Connor.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of, for years and years and years, the Jets played at Giants Stadium at the Meadowlands. Like, every time you'd go into the Jets Stadium, you'd still have, all the blue and red and all that stuff. They're playing in the Giants' home for years, and eventually they were able to. While they still play in the same stadium as the Giants, MetLife Stadium definitely is like a true, Giants and Jets home. Like, I saw a video of how they went through the transformation every time they did that. Like, they were able to swap out the end zones. They swapped out all the lights, or like, well, they didn't swap out the lights, but like they put different filters in. So that way, you'd have all like Jet stuff in like the merchandise stores, all the, they had Jets and Giant stuff. So it truly is like a 2-team home. I'm sure SoFi Stadium is the same way with the Rams and Chargers, but you're right. But since Staples Center's been there for so long, it's kind of like that situation with the Giant Stadium at the Meadowlands. Like, the Clippers just kind of came in and, took up residence in the Lakers' arena, and it's never changed. And I think it is important because, when you're going to a game and there's a lot of, I don't know how often I've seen this, but I mean, like, you can go into a game, a Clippers home game, and a lot of the fans there are actually like rooting against the Clippers because they're just Lakers fans that live in LA, and they live near the Staples Center, and they just want to go to a game. But they're all like a lot of Lakers fans that go there that are obviously rooting against the Clippers because they're such big rivals. So, you know, I don't know what they could do. Like you said, if they could get another arena somewhere in LA, or maybe if they want to relocate, I don't know if I'd go to San Diego, but maybe if they want to go to Las Vegas, because, there's a popular thing of teams moving to Las Vegas. They've got the Golden Knights and the Raiders, so why not, Las Vegas Clippers? I do agree. I think that is an important thing to just have, somewhere that is truly your home, because you're right. They're living in the Lakers' home.
All right, Eric, you agree?
The problem with this compared to like the NFL thing, while the Giants and Jets have more of a shared thing now, like Connor was talking about, it's still, even then, it's not as big of a deal, because with the Jets and the Giants, they're teams that are in two different conferences. Like, yeah, right. They're rivals because of the in-state thing. When they play every 4 years, it's a big deal when they play each other and all that. But like, unless they meet up in the Super Bowl, like,
that's funny.
Which, obviously right now that's not going to happen, but maybe sometime while we're still alive, like that could happen.
That's still a hilarious thought.
Then that would be a huge deal. But with the Clippers, they're rivals with the Lakers. They play each other 4 times.
Same division.
Yeah, they're in the same division. They play each other 4 times every year. And when you've had nowhere near the success that the Lakers have had, like, I agree with you guys. They need to find their own identity. And I think getting out of LA would be the best thing. I know some people might say that's suicide because of how big LA's market is, but when you're the inferior team in the market, like, it doesn't really matter. And the Clippers missed out on their chance because when Kobe was like injured a lot and past his prime, and the Lakers were struggling, and then they were really struggling after he retired and everything. And even the first year that LeBron was there, they had their a lot of struggles. Like, the Clippers missed out on some good chances, like when they had like CP3 and Blake Griffin and
well, it wasn't even just the Lakers that were struggling at that time too. It was like the King. The Kings always struggle, but like the Suns were struggling because they were, their big three had broken up. Like, no more Stoudemire, no more Nash. Like, the Suns' powerhouse team in the mid 2000s were broken down. The Warriors weren't quite what they were in the late 2010s. Like, they had some good opportunities there, kind of between like 2012 and 2012 to 2015 or so, where they really could have done some damage and they didn't.
Yeah, because let's say if, like, back when that was going on, if the Clippers had managed to win a couple championships and then the Lakers were having trouble getting any big names to come to their team, but then if the Clippers win a couple championships with that CP3 and Blake Griffin led team, then like they become a more attractive market than the Lakers. And maybe if that had happened, they still would have had a long ways to go because of just how long and deep the Lakers history is. But like, that could have been a big shift, but then they didn't win anything. They didn't even get to a conference finals or anything. And then of course, then they all left. And then, of course, then the Lakers got LeBron and AD. And then, obviously, even though the Clippers had a better season technically this year, like, the Lakers are still obviously far superior and always will be. So, as much as I hate to say that. So, the Clippers need to – they should consider it. Like Zach said, with as rich as their owner is, like, for him, it's like, who cares? Like, buying a new arena would be like me
he could buy, like, half the NBA teams if he really like. That's not you're not allowed to do that, but he could. Like, that's how much money this guy has.
Him moving the team to another city and buying an arena is like me going to Chick-fil-A and getting a sandwich and fries. Okay, like, so like he can afford it if he really wants to. So yeah, I agree with you guys. Like, I don't think they should even get an arena in the same city because, like Connor talked about with Lakers fans going to the games. The same thing. Like, they need to get a whole new fan base, new deal. Like, that's what
hey, go up to Seattle. How about that?
Yeah, become the new Supersonics. Yeah.
No, because that's obviously a market that has a strong NBA fan base.
Yeah.
I think Vegas is more likely to get an expansion team, but I think Seattle's going to get a relocation team, whether it be the Kings or maybe the Clippers. And plus, I think that's where Microsoft, they're out of like Seattle, right? So it feels like it'd be a good match. So and they stay in the West, obviously, but
I don't want to change conferences or anything. But
yeah. So that works on all fronts.
The Carolina Clippers.
Oh,
Wait,
God.
Zach, if the Clippers relocate to Seattle, are you going to become a Seattle fan then over Portland?
No.
No, okay.
Not
I know your
if
dad
it's the
will. I know
Clippers.
your dad will, but
Yeah, not the Clippers though. I don't like them. But
they won't
if
be
they
the
got an
Clippers, Zach.
expansion team, I'd be cool with that. But...
They'll be the Supersonics, Zach. They won't be the Clippers.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Damian
watch in
Lillard's
5 years that happens now.
Damian Lillard's gonna go join that team, you know.
Then Zach
right.
will be a fan of them.
Let's move on to the Hawks quickly, guys, before we get to the finals. It's already been almost 30 minutes talking about the Clippers relocating. But so the Hawks, guys, what moves should the Hawks make? And do you think it's realistic for them to be back in this situation? Because I've seen tweets and Instagram posts that are like, this is just the beginning. The Hawks are here to stay. Like, when I see this sort of stuff, I think to myself, like, they say the same thing about the Miami Heat last year? Like, there's no guarantee the Hawks are going to be back, in my opinion. I guess I'll throw it to Connor first. Connor, do you think it's where do you think the Hawks go from here? Is this the ceiling? How much do they have to improve to get past this and into the finals? If they had to face the Nets, would they have even made it this far? Like, talk to us about the Hawks, and then any sort of glaring moves that you think they need to make in the offseason.
I mean, I think the comparisons to the Heat are a little bit, I don't know, they don't have a lot of merit in them, just because I feel like they're so different. Like, and at these times, like the Heat, you know, when they made their championship run last year, like they were, you know, obviously they had some young pieces with like Tyler Hero and some of those other, and Bam Adebayo, but like for the most part, they were an older team. Like, you know, Goran Dragic, like Jimmy Butler's getting up there in age. Like, you know, this Hawks team is a young up and coming team. They have a lot of, you know, first round picks on this team that are, you know, just coming of age. You know, really, I wouldn't do too much if I was them. Honestly, I think getting more defensive help for them would be good. Like, I don't know. Obviously, if they could get another superstar to come join Trae Young, that would be fantastic. But I'm not sure that's really a realistic goal, given that Atlanta is not exactly a bright market or anything. Like, there's no one's going, oh, I want to go to Atlanta. Like, Atlanta is such an alluring market. So that's probably out of the question. But yeah, I think if they just keep it the path they're going, I don't think, if they would have run into like the Nets, I don't think they would have made it. I think the Sixers were probably like the best case scenario for them, because I mean, we saw what happened when they played the Bucks. Like, you know, they were competitive, but I think it always was, you know, the Bucks were going to win that series, even if it wasn't for the injuries. But I mean, you know, even without Giannis and Trae Young playing, I mean, not 100% Trae Young, but he did still play. The Bucks still managed to win. So, and yeah, especially if they had gone up against the Nets when they were fully healthy, like, no question, they would have been probably. I don't know if they would have been swept, but at like 5 games would have been the case. So, just continue the development, honestly. Like, maybe bring in a couple. I think I said a couple episodes ago, like maybe try and bring in like a veteran presence, like a veteran. I don't know what position exactly, but
Vince Carter, he's not coming back. He retired.
Yeah, but just bring in, like, you know, like a veteran player, maybe like a former All-Star, you know, someone who's, you know, not quite at that level anymore, but someone you can bring in who's affordable to kind of mentor these young players, because you know, I can see these young players turning into something. I don't know if they're going to go on this same kind of run next season. You know, I think that's a little bit too tall of a task to ask, like you were saying, that they're going to be back in the Eastern Conference Finals next season. But I could definitely see it 2 to 3 years from now, they could be back in this position again. We could be talking about the Hawks, like, all right, the Hawks are, you know, contenders in the East. You know, can they take down, you know, whoever is the big team at that time? You know, who knows if the Nets are still going to be together at that time. So I can definitely see good things for the future of this team. It's just going to take time. It's not going to happen immediately, like a lot of these people are saying.
Eric, do you want to add anything else to the Hawks? Is there any like glaring moves that you think they should make? Kind of just develop the young guys, because it's a very young roster.
This is you know, tricky because they do have a lot of young guys, and obviously you want to see them continue to develop, but I just don't know if the current roster that they have is good enough to win a championship, especially with how the Bucks have gotten better now. Like, they seem to have found their right roster. Obviously, they're in the finals now, and then obviously the Nets, when KD and Harden and Kyrie are all, when they're all healthy, they're a lethal team. And hopefully for the 76ers sake, they're going to get rid of Ben Simmons and get somebody that gels better with the team, and maybe they'll finally not choke. But like, they've got a really good team on paper. So I just don't know if what the Hawks have is good enough. And if I were them, what I would look to do, I don't know, like, what kind of suitors might be available. But if I were them, I would be willing to package like 2 or 3 of these guys on their team to ship to another team for a superstar. I would be to pair with Trae Young.
So you want a superstar like on Trae Young's level, or like a guy? Is Trae Young going to be the number one?
Well, I mean, I doubt there's any like superstars available that are better than Trae Young. But if you can at least get somebody that's like at his level, like, I don't know, because like some of these guys are good, but then the problem is there, as you saw in the playoffs, when these role players like weren't. I don't want to say role players because they're younger guys. They could be up and coming and could be better than role players. But, some of these starters on this Hawks team, like, would disappear at times. And when that happened, then obviously they lost. And it's, you have the advantage in one sense to be like, man, all it takes is a couple of them to go off. Even if 2 or 3 of them are struggling, if 2 of them go off, they can still win. But then what happens when all of them, struggle? Like, and Trae Young's not going to be able to carry the team by himself, especially because, he is lacking in the defensive area as well. I definitely agree with Connor. They do need to get some defensive help. But I don't know, man. I would be willing to package 2 or 3 of these guys, like, say, maybe like Herder and Bogdanovich and like Gallinari or something like that. Like, I would be willing, especially because Gallinari is older too. Like, he probably isn't in like the long-term future plans for
well,
them.
you probably, instead of Gallo, you'd probably have to throw in like Collins or Capella, because like, I don't think Gallo's going to garner much value at this point in his career.
Yeah, well, that's true. He had some like key moments in games, but he wasn't like consistent through the whole time. But that's the way like all of them were. So but yeah, that would be what I would try to do. And then if I'm not able to find any takers or anything, then I would keep developing and hope that they can get to the next stage. But I do mostly agree with Connor about the Hawks and Heat comparison definitely not being the same thing. But I do worry about them in the sense that maybe they did overachieve though, and them getting, like, if they were to keep the exact same team, I don't think they would get to the Eastern Conference Finals again. I don't think they would do like the Heat did and get swept in the first round or anything. I think they would be better than that, but I don't think they would get back. Like, people that are like thinking that this team alone is going to be good enough to get back, I'd be a little worried about that.
All right, guys. Let's move on now. We're like 30 minutes into this and talk about the NBA Finals. So hopefully you've stuck around to listen to our thoughts about the NBA Finals. So let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. So unless you've been living under a rock, if you lost internet for a week or something, the finals are the Bucks and the Suns. Known that for a couple of days now, and it's interesting, the schedule for the finals. Like, there's a lot of like 2 days in between games, so this could drag on a long time if it ends up going 7 games, like 3 weeks potentially even, I think.
Trying to get, they want to get those TV ratings up. They want Giannis to come back. That's
yeah.
what it is.
It's definitely advantageous for Giannis to come back later in the series, but I will go ahead and start with my predictions and kind of say how I think the series is going to go, and then I'll turn it over to you guys and see what you guys have to say about it. But I am going to pick the Phoenix Suns to win this. I ever since the Suns beat the Denver Nuggets, they have, and the Nets lost in the playoffs. I'll say that too. Once the Nets got eliminated and the Suns swept the Nuggets, I've been on the train that Phoenix is going to win the NBA Finals. And obviously, there's been injuries that have helped them get to this point and that are going to help them at the start of this series. But I'm still picking the Suns. I just think they have the most complete team all around. With Booker, Ayton, Chris Paul, that's three legit players on their starting five. They have a deep team as well, good coaching, which matters in my opinion once you get this far in the playoffs. And I'm gonna say it's gonna go. I will say it goes 6 games. So I'm gonna say Suns in 6. I think the Bucks will probably win like game 3 and maybe game 5 or something like that, or game 4, and then the Suns win 2 in a row, something along those lines. But I think the Suns get the lead to start the series, and then I think they end up closing it out. And I will go ahead and predict CP3 to win the MVP. I think um, he's obviously going to get the sympathy vote since he's, he's an old veteran player, never been to the finals before. It's like, Booker still has a long career ahead of him. I think as silly as that sounds, like it actually matters to the voters that do these awards. And so I'm going to say CP3 wins. I do think he'll contribute enough to earn it, but he's going to get the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. If it's close, if you can make an argument for CP3 and Booker or DeAndre Ayton or something like that, like if it's close, the tie goes to CP3, in my opinion. And I think overall the series is going to be, I'm going to say there's going to be different games. So there's going to be, like I said originally, like an X factor in my opinion, like the Jay Crowder game, game 6 against the Clippers. Now they obviously ended up blowing them out, but Jay Crowder hit like 5 of 6 from 3 in the first half, in that game 6 closeout. And Cameron Payne had a really good game. Like it's gonna be all these different. I'm just gonna say the X factors for the Suns are like the non main contributors, like all those guys, all those random Suns players. I think each of them are going to have like their game. There's not going to be one that like stays throughout consistently every game. I think it's going to be a different one every game. So I'm going to say those are the X factors because the games that they show up, I think Ayton, Paul, and Booker will always show up enough. It's going to come down to those guys to put the Suns over the top, both offensively and defensively as well. And then for the Bucks point of view, I'm going to say the X factor. I mean, I'll go with Middleton because we know Middleton's going to play in all the games and he has to play like unbelievable in my opinion for them to win. So if Middleton doesn't play unbelievable, I don't think the Bucks have a chance. So those are my X factors for the teams and my Suns prediction. I'll give it over to Eric and you can state your predictions and X factors.
Yeah, so I also have the Suns winning in 6 games. My problem for the Bucks, obviously not having Giannis for at least a chunk of the series is a big deal. And even if he comes back at some point to play in the series, he won't be 100%. I don't know if it would be enough to put them over the edge because if Giannis was healthy, I was going to go with the Bucks, but obviously that has changed my perspective. And the biggest difference for me why I'm picking the Suns now, besides the Giannis injury, is just the inconsistency of the rest of the Bucks team. Whereas the rest of the Suns, besides their like big 3 guys, they seem to have been a lot more consistent throughout these playoffs than the Bucks role players have. Because I mean, the Bucks even got destroyed in that one game against the Hawks where Giannis got hurt. But even before Giannis got hurt, they were getting blown out, and Trae Young wasn't even playing in that game. And then the problem was I mean, Giannis didn't do good before he got hurt, but Middleton wasn't doing good in that game. And then none of the role players were really, Drew Holiday wasn't doing much. None of the other role players were really doing anything, and they got blown out. But then, they had the closeout game against the last two games that they won against the Hawks, and like Brooke Lopez had that one game where he hit like 30 points, where she doesn't normally ever do, and Middleton was on fire, and just everything was going right. But the problem is for me is just that the Bucks don't do that enough. So, but because they do it sometimes, I do think they are going to win a couple games. I don't know which, ones like Zach predicted, like maybe 3 and 5 or something. I don't know, but I just don't think they're going to do it consistently enough. Whereas CP3 just seems to have this Suns team like locked in, and Devin Booker should hopefully be better now. Like he had that nose injury and had to wear that mask, and he seemed off when that was happening, but he should be fine by now. And him and Chris Paul both had explosive last games in that closeout game to beat the Clippers, which that had been what I was worried about them. They had a couple of inconsistent games there, but throughout the playoffs in general, they've been really consistent. I believe they are the better team going into this. And so Suns in 6 for X factors. For the Suns, it definitely does for me as well have to be Jay Crowder. And not just for like his shooting, like he does have times where he gets hot from 3, but my other biggest thing for him besides that is he needs to watch his attitude on the court. He gets a lot of technical fouls. He commits a lot of dumb fouls, and then argues with the ref about it, which then leads to technicals. I know he can be a smack talker, and he tries to get in whoever he's guarding's head or whatever, but then a lot of times he lets them get in his own head, and he has a lot of frustration with that. And in like a regular season game, or maybe if you're like up big in a series or something, like if you're up 20 in a game and you get a technical foul, okay, that's no big deal. But this is the NBA Finals now, and I haven't paid attention to the number specifically, but I know once you get so many technical fouls, that you can get suspended for a game, which happened to Draymond in this series when they blew the lead to the Cavs and everything. And you don't want, so I don't know how many he is away, or he may not even be close, but I know he's gotten a lot of technicals, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's close. I mean, he just needs to be careful with that stuff and play smart and not do the stupid stuff. So if he can avoid that, that'll be a big help for the Suns. For the Bucks, my biggest X factor, I think I'm going to go with Brooke Lopez. We saw how big of a difference he made in that game without Giannis when he put up like 30 points or whatever it was, which he doesn't normally ever seem to do that. He's going to need to have some special performances like that in order for the Bucks to have a serious chance. Because like Zach said, obviously Middleton's going to have to be special, and Drew Holiday is going to have to be their number 2 option with Giannis out. We know that already, but they're going to need other people to step up too. And Brooke Lopez is going to need to contain Ayton. Ayton gets a lot of offensive rebounds, which gives the Suns second looks. He's going to need to help limit those. He needs to play a big part for them. But so those are my thoughts there. Connor, how do you feel?
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, like you guys, I see this clip of Devin Booker on Zach's computer here, but
it's a good
picture. So I'm also going with the Suns. It's really unfortunate that the Bucks don't have Giannis, because like Eric, I would have been making an argument for why I think the Bucks were going to win. But without Giannis, at least for a majority of these playoffs, I don't realistically see the Bucks having a chance. I'm honestly going to say the Suns are going to win this in 5, just because I don't know if Giannis is actually going to come back. And if he does, he's probably going to have a situation happen like what happened to Kevin Durant a couple seasons ago, where Like, he'll probably come in and he'll try to do something. Like, he'll probably try to he'll see an open lane in the transition and go, oh, like, I'm going to go do what I normally do and drive to the bucket and get some big dunk. And he's going to screw up his knee again. And, that's going to be it for him. So, so I say the Suns are going to do this in 5. I think the Bucks maybe take like game 3, probably, get that first win at home, but then the Suns will win 4 and 5. Really, I think the biggest X factor probably, I mean, you guys really hit on it with Jay Crowder for the Suns being a big X factor. I guess if I had to pick another X factor for the Suns that's not Jay Crowder, I'd probably have to go with my UNC guy, Cameron Johnson, just because he's probably one of their most important players off the bench, just because, I mean, he's the best 3-point shooter on the team. He's really good in transition, and he's got, a larger physical stature where he can really help a lot when it comes to playmaking, and both in transition offense and transition defense. He can be a more physical presence. He obviously is going to have to help when he's on the court with the rebounding because, I know what the Bucks are going to do. If Giannis can't play, then, the Bucks are still likely going to have a height advantage because they're going to probably have Bobby Portis out there with Brook Lopez. And yes, obviously the Suns have DeAndre Ayton, but having Portis and Lopez out there, they're going to command the boards while they're out on the court. So Cameron Johnson really needs to help. I'm not sure how well he's going to do against Portis, but with his larger stature and his physical prowess, he's going to have to help there. Then when it comes to the Bucks, I guess if I had to say Zach said Middleton and Eric said Lopez, I'm probably going to go with Drew Holiday, just because he has these games where he looks like an all-star, and he is hitting everything. He's playing great both ends of the court. He's fantastic, but he's just way too inconsistent. I know we've talked about this with all the Bucks players, but it seems like him more so than anyone else on this team is just more inconsistent. He'll have stretches. Middleton will usually have these things where he'll go like 1 good game, 1 bad game, 2 good games, 1 bad game, something like that. Holiday is kind of like he'll have 1 good game and then like 2 or 3 bad games and then come back and have like another good game, which he kind of needs to cut. He needs to cut that down a lot. It needs to, be maybe more along the lines of Middleton, because I wouldn't expect him to go out there and be, Devin Booker or Steph Curry like every game when it comes to being on it every game, just because he's not that level of player. But he needs to get more on Middleton's level of inconsistency than being on his level of inconsistency. So especially for him, he's going to be important. The Bucks, without Giannis on the team and without that scoring threat, they need to really rely on their defense, which they were able to do against the Nets, especially in that game 3 when they won by like 3 points, but the score was like 86-83. They have to rely on this defense, and Drew Holiday is a great perimeter defender, so he's going to be charged with trying to defend Chris Paul, trying to defend Devin Booker. And if he can keep them in check, then he can give the Bucks a chance to win this game, because even if the Bucks are being inconsistent on offense, if they're keeping the Suns in check on the defensive side of the ball, then you're still in it and then at some point someone can find their game and start hitting some shots. But the defense is going to be critical, and Drew Holiday is really going to be the heart of that, given that the Suns, their strength is in the backcourt with Paul and Devin Booker. So I'm going to have to go with Drew Holiday there. I guess if I had to pick a finals MVP, I'd probably go the same as Zach and pick Chris Paul. Like Zach said, he's got the sentimental vote going on here. Like, everyone wants it to be him. Everyone wants him to get his title, kind of like when Peyton Manning had his last, in Super Bowl 50. Like, everyone wanted Peyton to win. Like, pretty well the only people that were probably rooting for the Panthers were Panthers fans. Everyone else was rooting for the Broncos. So, I don't know if that's exactly going to be the case here, but everyone's going to be rooting for Chris Paul to do well, and I'm sure he will do well. And I just don't see, like, Devin Booker would have to play out of his mind, in my opinion, and Paul would have to really struggle for Paul to not win Finals MVP. But like I said, I hope it's going to be more competitive, but I just don't see, like, even if Giannis comes back, like I said, he's just not going to be himself. He's probably just going to go down with another injury. We've seen it happen so many times, and it's just, a little frustrating, I guess, from a fans' perspective, like, I obviously won't be upset if the Suns win or anything. Like, they've never won a title. I like Chris Paul, all that stuff. But just the fact that, we were talking about Chris Paul's legacy on the last podcast, that I really feel like, yes, obviously this title will be, if he can get it, who knows? The Bucks could come out and win it in 5-2. You never say never. But I feel like this isn't going to do much for his legacy in the sense that, like, it's not that he's playing on a stacked team or anything. It's just that the Suns are literally, in a way, almost having this title just handed to them just by the fact that they have benefited so much from the injuries in this playoffs. I mean, I think Eric went through and ran through the teams when we talked about this last time, but like, they got to play against the Lakers with a hobbled AD who didn't even play in a couple of the games, down the stretch there. The Nuggets, they got to play against a Nuggets team without Jamal Murray the whole time. They swept them. So I'll still say that was pretty impressive. Even without Jamal Murray, the fact that they swept the Nuggets, they still had Jokic. So that was pretty good. But then obviously they got the benefit of playing the Clippers without Kawhi. And then now you're getting to play the Bucks without Giannis. Like, pretty well every team they've gone against has been without either their number 1 or number 2 player, and even that number 2 player on the Nuggets was still a superstar in Jamal Murray. So, whereas the other 3 teams have literally been without their best player. I don't know. Maybe it would make it more even for me if, say, Devin Booker went down and then the Suns still managed to win. Then I would say that was probably pretty good for the Suns. But it's just a little annoying. It's like, you want to see teams playing at their best, and clearly the Bucks are not at their best. And it's, leading to, and what in my opinion is going to be a walkover pretty much in this finals. It's not going to be as exciting as I think a lot of people thought it was originally going to be when everyone was healthy.
Yeah, that's true. I still think it's going to do a lot just because it'll erase the choking narrative that he has.
Oh, sure.
Like it's,
yeah.
And for all those times he lost in the conference finals or the second round, like, to get a ring that will make it all feel a lot better.
It's funny because you talk about erasing the choking narrative. That would really be true if they didn't win this time, in my opinion.
And also too, like, if let's say Giannis comes back and he's like a big reason why they win, that's huge for him too, because he's considered by a lot of people to be like the best regular season player, but when you say best player, everybody else would say like LeBron or KD or someone like that, so he's a 2-time regular season MVP, but he's never done it in the playoffs. So if he were to come back and have a crazy series, that would do a lot to his resume. He's already like a Hall of Famer like CP3 is, but still it would add to their, on the top, 20 list of players of all time sort of thing. They go up on that sort of list. There's an interesting little trivia piece here, guys. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but somebody actually has already won the NBA Finals.
I saw this, actually. I do know this, actually.
Okay, Eric, do you know what I'm talking about here?
I do not know what you're talking about.
Okay, so Torrey Craig, guys, he started the season with the Bucks, and right now he was traded to the Suns, so he's on the Suns team right now. So he is guaranteed a championship ring no matter which team wins, because he was with the Bucks to start. So if the Bucks end up winning the season, he was a part of the Bucks championship team. If the Suns win, he's on them right now, so he gets the ring there.
Hey,
so
all right, congrats.
And it says here in this article too, there was a meaningless midseason trade of Craig to Phoenix for $110,000 in cash. And he was hardly played with Milwaukee, but he's been a contributor for Phoenix. So that's something too, like, that's a motivation thing. I mean, you better believe like Torrey Craig is gonna play the most, he's gonna play as best as he possibly can, because he's gonna want to prove to Milwaukee, like see this, guys, you traded me for cash, and now I'm gonna beat you in the finals.
It wasn't even a lot of cash. It was $110,000.
Yeah,
like,
that's the minimum too. That's the minimum.
It reminds me of that 2K storyline where your guy got traded in the G League for like like a copier and a year supply of sandwiches or something like that from some
Printer.
sandwich shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
that's interesting.
Well, I think I read something too, like, it would be really interesting because obviously if the Suns win, like, he'll be happy and he'll take the ring. But, I saw an interesting thing about, wondering with him, like, if the Bucks win, like, will he accept the ring? Like, is he gonna,
I would if I was him.
I mean, I would, but like, it's just kind of one of those things. Like,
It's weird, yeah.
like, is it really like this is my championship ring? Like for a team that I played 18, I think it was like 18 games he played for them, and then got traded away for cash. Like, this is my championship ring. Like, I don't know. I feel like it would leave a bad taste in my mouth.
It would be hard to look at because if you look at it, you're like, I didn't really earn this,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that's ever happened before. Where a player was on a team that beat his current team in the finals. That's in the same year. I mean, I don't know. But that's going to wrap this episode up, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed listening. Let us know on Twitter who you think will win the NBA Finals, your X Factor players, all of that jazz. You can find us on Twitter at clutchcrewsport. And until then, guys, peace out. Oh, sorry. Be clutch. I didn't know what to say.
Zach is screwing up the outro. Bye.
Hey, it wasn't me this time.
Please.